At first, there was just a word, luminous. And that word led to tons of speculation. Is this some big new Star Wars project? Will Yoda be involved? Is this kind of a Marvel type situation? Will all of Legends become canon now? And after months of speculation, a fateful February evening put all of that to rest. A press event was called, and so many details about this new High Republic project were revealed. Of course, that led to fresh speculation. I mean, now we had some character names, we had a little bit of detail about what this was about. But we had really only scratched the surface. We didn't know exactly what this new era of Star Wars was going to look like, how expansive it was going to be, how many books, comics, maybe even TV shows were going to be included. And so we looked ahead to August of 2020 when all of this was set to be revealed. Of course, 2020 then hit, and because of the COVID-19 pandemic, that publishing date was delayed until January of 2021, forcing us to wait another almost 6 months. But now that is finally upon us, and we are introduced to the world of the High Republic, to Project Luminous in Star Wars: Light of the Jedi by Charles Soule. Soule had a crazy task with this book, and that's to deliver everything that the High Republic is going to represent to Star Wars fans, while also captivating our attention and getting us interested in this new era. And Soule delivered on all of that, while also delivering what might possibly be the best Star Wars book of all time. And as with all our reviews, this review represents the opinion of the Youtini review team, who discusses the book after having read it and puts their scores together for different categories. So if you disagree with us on any of the categories or any of the points you make, feel free to leave a comment below and discuss what you thought about the book. So with that said, let's jump into the plot. So Light of the Jedi starts with a punch as the fabled Great Disaster hits. The rest of the book leaves us trying to figure out the pieces, what happened with the Great Disaster, while introducing us to the various factions in the High Republic as each of them respond to this tragedy, which nearly killed billions. So after the disaster occurs, the rest of the book's plot kind of shows how different characters, whether it's politicians, villains, Jedi, or natives, respond to this disaster. And Soule uses this as a way to kind of introduce us to the various players in the High Republic. Soule's decision to kind of put all of this within the framework of the Great Disaster really helps him avoid any momentum-killing exposition. I mean, sure, this is an introduction to a completely new era, to new characters, to so much new, but this book frames it in a story that's actually really compelling and, in a way, quite narrow, while still introducing us to all of the important players. Multiple story arcs are contained within Light of the Jedi, and Soule somehow manages to make them all equally compelling. We've got the Jedi, who are trying to uncover the cause of the Great Disaster even as they work to stop any more harm from being done. We see the Chancellor trying to maintain control over the galaxy even as panic starts to spread with this new disaster. And mysteries of hyperspace are revealed through a family whose name is ever so slightly familiar to our ears. And that's not even to mention the Nihil. The Nihil are the villains tasked with taking on the Republic and the Jedi, while also being a villain that kind of stands up to Star Wars fans who are ready to dismiss anything that doesn't hold a red lightsaber. It's a huge task, to say the least, and yet the Nihil somehow still conquer it with ease. This isn't just a band of smugglers. They have a plan, they have a purpose, they have an organization, and they have a level of brutality that we really don't see with your typical smugglers in the Star Wars universe. These are formidable villains, and we see their brutality in multiple points throughout the book. And a lot of times the villain chapters of a book can kind of lag behind the rest a little bit, but Soule does not miss a beat with these. You'll devour these just as ravenously as the rest of this book. And so Light of the Jedi is full of plot twists, plot turns, things you weren't expecting. So much is encapsulated in this plot. Soule masterfully captures all aspects of the plot, from the villains to the Jedi to the Republic, introducing twists and turns throughout the book that make you want to just keep turning the pages.
And so with this fantastic story, the review team at Youtini has rated the plot of this book a 9.1 out of 10.
And now on to the stars of the show, the characters. Fantastic characters are no stranger to the Star Wars publishing world. I mean, most EU books actually introduce us to a number of interesting characters. Some characters jump out at us and stick in our memory forever, like Grand Admiral Thrawn, Yrica Quell, Prince Zyzer, the list goes on and on. However, it's hard to think of a Star Wars novel that introduced this many characters with this deep of storylines, where every character is crafted with such a purpose and intent behind them. Whether the characters introduced for 4 pages or for 40 pages, whether they're a farmer, a villain, a Jedi, a politician, Soule treats them with equal love and respect, crafting a beautiful backstory and present characterization for each character. Each character feels truly unique and rounded, like they have a backstory behind them instead of just being a throwaway introduced for this book. And really, I mean, that kind of could have been expected with how many new characters Soule has to introduce in this book. It could have been easy to kind of just ramble off some of their main features, but instead, Soule treats them with this level of love, almost like they're kind of all this family members that he's creating. Soule's introduction of new Jedi is breathtaking. We meet them all in unique situations as they kind of come to combat this great disaster, and we see how they all view the Force differently, giving each their own separate characterization, their own separate feel. For example, for Avar Kriss, the Force is kind of this symphony of music that swirls around every living being, and every other Jedi we're introduced to in this book views the Force in a different way. It's so much fun to get introduced to these new Jedi and see their personalities right from the time they're introduced on the pages. And of course, Soule doesn't hold back with the villains either. Within the Nile, Soule manages to create memorable characters. Chief among them is the Eye of the Nile, Marchion Ro. Now, Ro is one of the most intriguing villains introduced in Star Wars in recent history, maybe even ever. And his rise to power in Nile style is truly brutal, chaotic, and intriguing. To introduce every character in Light of the Jedi would be a disservice to this book, because Soule introduces each one so beautifully. If we had to find a complaint in characters, it might be that this book just wasn't long enough to give us enough of these fantastic characters. But hey, that's what the rest of the High Republic is for, right?
And with all these amazing new characters, our review team has given characters in this book a 9.3 out of 10.
And with that, let's move on to originality. So crafting something entirely original, especially in a very established universe like Star Wars, is a tough task. Do you kind of rely on a sense of futuristic nostalgia that fans have, or do you just blow the doors off and come up with something completely new? Well, if you picked option 2, you're in luck, because that's what Light of the Jedi does. Light of the Jedi adds so much creativity to the Star Wars universe while also still feeling like Star Wars. If you're a Star Wars fan, you've noticed it. Everything in Star Wars has a Star Wars feel that's unique in the sci-fi genre. So even as Soule is introducing us to this entirely new universe, it still feels like Star Wars, and that's perfect. One example of this is Soule's introduction of new ship design. The Jedi Vectors were a particular favorite of the team with their really sleek design and of course their ability to only be controlled by the Force users. And this leads to another kind of innovation by both Charles Soule and the High Republic publishing team, and that's connection. The Jedi in this book are not only connected to each other and to the Force, but they're connected to so much of the world, including ships and weapons. Through differences in the way the Jedi relate to both the Force and the world around them, Soule kind of creates this almost new conception of the Jedi that both reflects this era and the eras that come after it. I mean, there's new questions we can't help but ask after being introduced to the Force the way Charles Soule does. And such questions can only be created due to the incredible specificity and detail that Charles Soule uses as he creates this world in the High Republic.
And so with this incredible original story, our review team gave the originality of this book a 9.9.
And with that, let's move on to writing. So Charles Soule has written a number of novels in the galaxy far, far away, but Star Wars fans actually know him best as a writer for the Star Wars comics series. So with hits like The Rise of Kylo Ren and Poe Dameron, Charles Soule was already well loved coming into this new era. There's been a lot of praise for Charles Soule's characters, his originality, his plot, and none of it would be possible without fantastic writing as its foundation. Without vivid detail and writing that captures our attention, we wouldn't be nearly so interested in this era and in these characters. So just as Star Wars movies and TV shows are renowned for their ability to mix spectacle with drama and emotion, Charles Soule's work actually allows you to create almost one of those kind of movies in your mind. The writing is so vivid, and his writing style kind of keeps us in the action. It helps us be aware of all these adrenaline-filled moments. He whisks us from the point of view of one character to the next, from one event to the next, without missing a beat. His writing style really immerses us into the world of the High Republic, and that's part of what helps us keep turning the pages. So occasional modern syntax and phrases like laser swords might be a little jarring to some readers who are used to other Star Wars writing. But if you're able to put down this book without telling yourself just one more chapter, your mental strength is to be praised. Perhaps the only thing that's more amazing than the fact that you've lived up till now without the Star Wars High Republic is the fact that this is Charles Soule's first Star Wars adult novel, and it won't be his last.
As you can tell, we love the writing of this book, giving it a 9.8 out of 10.
Now let's move on to entertainment. This book is so much fun. While Light of the Jedi is filled with fantastic characters, story elements, and lore, it's also filled with plenty of moments that will just have you on the edge of your seat, these adrenaline-filled rushes, and also some hilarious moments between the different characters. So for all of the political intrigue and the lore and the Force connection that this book creates, it's also just full of pure joy. Each character has their moment of greatness that will just take your breath away. It's kind of like sitting in the theater with an overpriced tub of popcorn and a soda, waiting in anticipation to see those words as the opening crawl starts. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. That's what Light of the Jedi is like. It launches us into the next era of Star Wars while just being an absolute blast throughout. When you're in the theater watching a new Star Wars movie, you're not necessarily thinking about all of the plot. Not yet anyway. You're just having a ton of fun. And that's what this book is.
This book was incredibly entertaining, which is why we give it a 9.9 out of 10 for entertainment.
So to wrap up, the expectations for this book were enormously high. As soon as it was announced, it was clear that the High Republic was to be the future of Star Wars publishing. Whether it was good or bad, this was the era that was going to take us forward into the next generation of Star Wars. And at the time, no new Star Wars films had been announced, so it was pretty much the High Republic that was the fulcrum of Star Wars' future. The pressure was high, the stakes were higher, and somehow they were all surpassed. Most of our staff concurs that Light of the Jedi is one of the best Star Wars books to ever grace our eyes, and if Del Rey and Disney put all their chips into Light of the Jedi to push them forward into the future of Star Wars publishing, that bet is really gonna pay off.
And so overall, our review team at Youtini gives Star Wars Light of the Jedi a 9.6 out of 10. It's a fantastic book.
So go meet the new characters, go explore this new universe, go bathe yourself in the Light of the Jedi. And if you're interested in getting this book for free, stick around for this. So this video is brought to you by Audible. Now Audible has a partnership with Youtini that actually allows you to get your first Star Wars audiobook completely free. All you have to do is head on over to youtini.com/audible and sign up for an Audible account using that link. Once you do, you'll have a credit to use on whichever Star Wars audiobook you like. And hey, Light of the Jedi is the perfect opportunity to use that. Of course, if you're planning on picking up the hardcover, there are a couple Star Wars audio dramas and plenty of other fantastic Star Wars audiobooks out there that you can get for free. And as you're going through this, you shouldn't experience the excitement of the Light of the Jedi alone. If you want fans who are just as excited about it as you are to discuss this book with, head on over to our vibrant and positive Discord community over at youtini.com/discord, where we discuss all the latest releases, as well as just a ton of other Star Wars stuff. It's a lot of fun, and again, a really positive way to talk about Star Wars. And instead of our traditional sign-off, let's end this video in a more apropos way. We are all the Republic.